Welcome to Haig's Business Winners, a club that brings together leaders, industry experts, entrepreneurs, startups, and those willing to share their business experiences and learn from others. Just like my podcast, Other Side of the Business Card, we explore business conversations with humanity, humor, and passion. Listen in as we uplift, motivate, and learn from each other. Welcome to Haig's Business Winners. This is a new time for us because of the train strikes in the UK. We couldn't get into the studio yesterday. So we're very excited to have Winston Chesterfield here. Hi, Winston.
Hi.
Welcome
for having me.
Welcome to the Paddington studio. We're going to have a really kind of fun power hour talking about luxury, something that we all love. Today we're going to take, again, more of a business angle on luxury, but I am interested to have questions from the audience if they have specifics around certain brands and certain things. We want to know how they're doing and where they're going. Winston, I'm going to just redo a start in a minute for those people still joining, but I want to again welcome you to Haig's Business Winners. So tell me where it all started. As a child, were you attracted to certain types of luxury, whether it was cars or lifestyle, or is it just really the business of luxury that you find very attractive because the type of customers you deal with, the kind of work you do every day? Just give us a bit of a sense of the attraction of luxury and when that first started in your life.
It actually started quite a long time ago. Two different areas. Firstly, I was watching a lot of old movies with my mother. When I was very young, black and white movies, Cary Grant, 1930s, 40s, 50s movies, Fred Astaire. And one of the things that was very apparent to me, even as a small child, was how glamorous their lifestyles were. They would prop up at a bar in the film in New York, wearing very elegant clothing, drinking champagne, drinking cocktails. They would go to very glamorous places, drive very glamorous cars. And as a child, it was magical to me, that lifestyle, that aesthetic, I suppose. And I was very drawn into it. And I was also very lucky as a young child to be taken to some really fabulous, particularly hotels, but also lovely restaurants as well by my parents. Went to one particular place of memory, this place called L'Auberge d'Ille in France. It's a very famous 3-star Michelin restaurant. Yeah. I was extremely young when I was taken there, and I remember they gave us these little crayons and things to mess around with because I didn't have an appreciation for the food at the time. But somehow all of that seeped into my memory and is part of my current consciousness. So my interest in luxury in working in luxury comes really from an initial interest in luxury, staying in lovely places, appreciating the difference between places that are, to me, when I was younger, I could see places that were luxury and non-luxury. I remember one particular instance in Cyprus, and I was early teenage years, and remembering we were staying in this beautiful hotel. And we went to another hotel to go and have a dinner. And I remember even then being very sensitive to the fact that our hotel had a better lobby area in terms of design. It smelled better. The rooms were far more spacious. The beds were far more comfortable. The toiletries were higher end. Even at that age, I was noticing these very small things. And I suppose that sensitivity just grew and grew. And that's really why I felt it suited me as a career. Eventually, I didn't start out in that. I started doing very odd bits of research and insight for the likes of energy companies. Did some stuff for some political consulting firms, but I really ended up where I think I belong, just in terms of that sensitivity I have for the sector and the fact that I care about it. I care about luxury. I care about craftsmanship. I care about quality. It's obviously a lifestyle that people aspire to as well. So there's a great positivity to it in that respect.
Right. So I get the attraction as a child in terms of what you study. Well, obviously as a child and after that. But how does a teenager start to formulate how to get in this industry? Because I remember when I was, I think, 17, I stayed with my cousin in Paris, and he worked in the fashion industry, and I got to go to one of the fashion shows, and it was certainly inspiring for me. But I ended up being a chemical engineer. So obviously I did something wrong, and I ended up in a different career because I love luxury too. But so how did you navigate that thought process, or did you just jump in and say, let me do business marketing degree and then move on?
It was, to be quite honest, it was actually completely by accident in the end. I wanted to become a lawyer, partly because I thought that it was a good career. It was interesting to study, and also it's well remunerated, so I thought it would be able to afford me a luxury lifestyle eventually. But actually, I really disliked. I dislike that sector now. Not I don't dislike the people in it, but I'm glad I didn't stay within the legal industry.
It's not for you, basically.
Yeah, it's not for me. No, and because of that, I sort of not getting into the legal industry. I ended up bouncing around in a few jobs, particularly in research and insight. And I think the way into into the sector of luxury largely is through the marketing channel. That's what most people end up in luxury understanding and advising and consulting on luxury, usually come at it through that marketing route, simply because most of what luxury is about in terms of understanding is just psychology of understanding how people think, what people want, what people desire, and what people need. And that's how most people who have something to offer the industry will get into luxury, is through the marketing psychology route.
Wonderful. In terms of, let's just jump to present day, and then we'll go back and fill in some gaps. And just for those of you who don't know, the format here is I'm going to have a little private conversation with Winston and just get a few of my questions out just to warm him up. I also have Abigail in the studio here who's helping us mod the whole session, and will certainly jump in with a lot of questions on luxury, as that's certainly her area as well. And then I will open up to the panel, like I said, for the second 20 minutes, and in the last 20 minutes we'll take questions from the audience, or we'll just keep chatting as it works out. So tell me, in terms of present day now, you see, you've probably been through a few kind of ups and down recessions like me, and I know everyone's got a different flavor in terms of, I guess, when I started work, we were kind of in this general recession-ish period in the 90s, but the big one that hit me when I was in consulting was the 2000, I guess, the dot-com crash, and then we had 2008. How do you see luxury today? Do you see it as one of the sectors that is doing well, okay? Is it safe in terms of some of the businesses there, or do they have a lot of worries on their hand?
Luxury is probably the most resilient sector when it comes to recessions. It's not recession proof, but it's extremely resilient. There's a few reasons for that. Firstly, that tie of luxury with wealth. Wealthy people, even throughout recessions, still purchase luxury.
Right.
So even if you lose a mass market audience in luxury, and discretionary spending stops amongst the mass market, if your products or your services in luxury still have a huge focus towards very wealthy people with lots of capital, they're not really going to stop spending that much, and you usually are okay. It's much worse, obviously, if your entire business model is focused on people for whom that marginal discretionary spend is so major and it just immediately stops.
Just a quick question, don't forget what you're going to say, but in terms of, there's also tiers of luxury, I would think, which means somebody might go down from, I don't know, a £20,000 handbag to a £10,000, but the luxury business is still doing okay. So am I right in kind of thinking that there's these tiers that also, it's not a complete on and off spending type of pattern?
No, exactly. And the tiers of luxury actually are within brands as well. So take Chanel as a great example of that, in that you have beauty, which is right at the bottom in terms of the entry level of price point. And there's an audience for that is massive. It's global. It's not just wealthy people. It's mass market consumers as well. And then above that, you have accessories that Chanel sells. So that's things like sunglasses. Then above that, you have your leather goods, and then you have your ready-to-wear fashion. And then you have your couture. So within all these tiers, the great thing about luxury is that everyone at the bottom wants really what people at the top are having. That's the whole point about this. It's an aspiration pyramid, and because of that, brands that start at the top with couture and with higher-end products can always kind of broaden down at the bottom whenever they need to from a business perspective, particularly if they have a very strong brand. So if you start out making really expensive handbags that everyone really wants, you can always broaden it out to the bottom to a bigger consumer base if you need. The danger with all of that, obviously, is that you then end up diluting some of the brand for some of the higher end consumers. But you're right, there are tiers of luxury, and brands themselves use those tiers extremely effectively. And just going back to that point about recessions, it's because of that split that you have this, you attract sort of so many different tiers of wealth across your brand, that it enables you actually to guarantee revenue from certain divisions, even in recessions, even in down times. Whereas if you are totally focused on, as I say, that sort of mass market group, you will notice the difference. You will see a big drop. So in that sense, is luxury well placed? Yes, just by its nature it is, as long as your business is capable to take advantage of that group of people for whom recessions have less of a negative impact.
You make me think of something else, which is the whole kind of digital transformation. And we certainly saw it with the lockdown that obviously restaurants who had a very good customer relationship management system, they had emails, they had stuff in London at least. I'm pretty sure it's the same in most metropole kind of big cities. They really thrived because they were able to get stuff out at a lower cost, and obviously they knew their customer, and they were able to add or take away kind of menus during lockdown. And so digital kind of paid off. And I think it's still going to pay off for them even now after pandemic. In terms of luxury, the people who have, or the brands that have invested in very strong digital, very strong social, is there a payoff during these downturns, or do you think it still doesn't make as much of a difference in that sector?
Obviously, it completely depends on the sector of luxury. I mean, there's very little you can do digitally with the luxury travel sector, for example. I mean, you can't make up for people not being able to travel with digital offerings. But I think, let's take, for example, fashion and accessories, which is the one that takes the most advantage of digital and social revolutions. They did extremely well throughout the pandemic, because there was almost nothing else for people to do. People with money had nothing else to buy. There was no sort of brain kick from anything else. Normally they're going out to clubs, they're going out to restaurants, they're traveling a lot. They didn't have any of that, so they just started to spend and get those endorphins released by buying jewelry, buying watches, buying fashion, buying handbags online. So the businesses that really took advantage of that the best were multi-brand platforms like Farfetch. Really had an amazing advantage, because it was a place where people can go and just browse for ages, put loads of things in their basket, buy it, and it was delivered to them the next few days. Or just single brand websites who are extremely good at inventory control, so making sure people still had a desire for something that said, we're back in stock in 2 weeks or something like that. So you have to create that sense of desire rather than it all being available all at once. And those businesses really did well because, as I said, there was almost nothing else for people to do. And obviously, yes, you did have a huge group of people with concern and worry about health or concern about jobs, but that's not who we're talking about here. We're talking about people who had, there was no other way in which to push their discretionary spend except this. And so those who are best set up digitally in luxury really reap the rewards throughout that period.
What about closer to home, like a Savile Row? Do you think those types of tailors have benefited from a digital conversion? I mean, obviously people still have to come in to get measured. So did it make a difference during the pandemic that they could stay in touch with people?
I think it was a bit of a struggle for businesses like that, to be honest. Businesses that require that touch, I mean, so couture, bespoke suits, anything that required that sort of personal contact really suffered, because I think there was an attempt to do it digitally, didn't really have the same, effect. I think people, particularly in things like tailoring and couture, actually like the human interaction. It loses something. Luxury as an industry, particularly at that end, it doesn't feel right to replace it with digital. Digital can only go so far and be used so much in luxury, because you start removing the essence of what luxury is about, which is a sense of personal touch, personal service, and also a sense of occasion, a huge sense of occasion. People like the idea of going shopping on a beautiful street like Bond Street, having lunch afterwards, having an occasion, a ceremony to the actual event, rather than simply just a transaction.
Yeah. No, I love that too. We're 20 minutes in, so I'm going to open up because I know Abigail also wants to ask some questions. So you're listening to a session today on the business of luxury and wealth, a market that we haven't discussed yet on Haig's Business Winners. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions on that. And I've got here Winston Chesterfield, who's absolutely amazing because you work in all the fantastic industries that I'd want to be in. Travel, hospitality, which I guess I'm in as a user, automotives, real estate, private aviation, yachting, fashion and accessories, and then fine wines and spirits and private clubs and membership, which I'm going to come back to at the end, especially quick word on cigars as well and whiskey. But before that, I'm going to hand off to Abigail to say a few words as well. Abigail, what do you think of this amazing conversation on luxury, which you've been dying to have since we've been doing this?
Oh my goodness, I'm absolutely loving this conversation so much, and I could take it down 5 or 6 different avenues. And the first time that I met Winston at Haig's Club, we had such a long conversation about what it is that you do, how you do it, because I just think it's fascinating. My background's a marketing degree in postgrad and over 10 years in finance and marketing. So I really understand the art of storytelling and how you build a brand through the touch points. And you were talking about the senses and how that it is a ceremony and it is an experience when you go to certain places. There's certain hotels I've stayed in the world, and obviously, I take the soap that they leave behind for me to take. But when you use that soap at home, you can close your eyes for a minute and imagine that you are in a hotel in Monaco and, that you are going to go down to have breakfast, and it's just so awesome. So I guess my question for you really is, well, my question for you right now, because I'd like to go into tech, but I think that we should really focus on storytelling. And what is it that you're advising your clients, and what is it that you're seeing in the market people are doing from the point of view of how to better tell their story in this technological world that we're in, and especially Haig was just talking about sort of the recessioning and the fact that we're in interesting times, shall we say. So what are sort of the main things, because I'm sure your clients are coming to you and saying, how do we do this? How do we get people to come to our doors to buy from us? So what are your top tips?
The first thing is you just have to create desire, because the most important motivation for buying any luxury, it's not a rational thing to buy luxury. It's an irrational purchase. No one needs it. No one needs any of this stuff, but you want it. So you need to create that sense of want, that sense of desire. And the first place that can come from 2 different ways. It can come from an internal sense of desire, that you really want something because it's just so well made, or it's just so beautiful, you just have to have it. It's something you've always wanted, or it's something you just want, and you don't care whether anyone else wants it. And the other angle of it is, if everyone else wants it, then you might want it as well. So I'll take those 2 things separately. The first one is almost impossible to sort of manage and control. You can't control and manage whether one individual really loves what you do or not. If you're a creative company and you're designing things in the luxury industry, you're going to have some people that like your product, you have some people that dislike your product, just from a fundamental internal point of view. You can't control any of that. And the most important thing in that is to be authentic. That is the vital thing for any brand. So when we talk to brands and they say, what are people wanting to buy right now? What designs do people like? we always try and advise brands, hold on, don't be inauthentic. The worst thing you can do as a brand is start copying what everyone else is doing, all the other brands are doing in terms of design, moving away from your core sense of creativity and what made you in the first place, and copying people is almost the worst thing you can do. It flatters the brands you're copying. It doesn't flatter you. And, simply because they're trying to chase everyone liking their product. Because if everyone likes that product this time, we have to copy all of that. And over time, what happens is people actually start to see the inauthenticity of your brand, and they don't like it. And that's worse than a number of people saying, I don't like that collection you produced. It didn't work for me. There's this connection with artistic creativity and luxury that needs to be there all the time. And artistic creativity relies upon sometimes people disliking what you do as well as liking what you do. You can't simply just make what works for people. This is not detergent. This is luxury. It's artistic creativity. The second one, which is people wanting something and desiring something because other people desire it, is actually more easy to control. And it's more easy to create that sense of desire, because what you're doing is you're tapping into certain insecurities, and it is true that they are insecurities, but insecurities that people have. People want to appear to be more successful. They want to appear to be more elegant. They want to appear to know what they're talking about. They want to appear to be wealthy, and they want to appear to be a sort of person that they're not. And the way in which you do that is really creative and a lot of fun. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, well, the lifestyle this person wants to live looks like this. So your brand has to fit inside that. And the best brands in the world don't just put a product on a page on their social media feed and say, buy our product. They build a whole lifestyle around their service or product that creates desire from those people because other people want it. They see a lifestyle that is attractive. They see other people having that lifestyle, and they say, I want a bit of that. And that's not an internal thing that's coming from them. That's much more externally driven. And you can actually create that. And what we try and do is instruct brands to build that lifestyle, to build that sense of who you are, add as many elements as you possibly can. I mean, one of the best at it was Ralph Lauren. Oh, he's obviously still alive, but in terms of that original creation of the lifestyle, he was almost the inventor of that. Before, fashion brands were very much about collections. And yes, you had this idea that people live glamorous lives if they're wearing, Saint Laurent or if they're wearing Dior. You knew that. But those brands before Ralph Lauren didn't really do that. They didn't create that sense of lifestyle. He had this belief in the perfect American lifestyle, Gatsby-esque, beautiful tailoring, vintage cars, which obviously he has a huge collection of, beautiful Long Island houses, parties, yachts. Traveling the world, seeing places, the seasons, all these things that people looked at in the lifestyle, they wanted. It was such a desirable thing. And it was the desirable lifestyle that made Ralph Lauren successful, not the clothes. It was people felt when they put the item on that they were living that same lifestyle, that Gatsby lifestyle. And that's the magic you create, is getting that sense, getting into some of those insecurities, some of those needs that people have to want to appear to be someone that they're not, or reach into a different lifestyle that's not their own. And that's the way to do it.
I love it. Thank you so much for sort of going deeper into explaining that. And if I could ask one more question.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I'm really fascinated by how people build their brands. And one of my sort of brand icons, if you like, is Paris Hilton. And I love what she does, and I love the collaboration side of it, which just seems to be coming more and more with the tech that Haig was talking about earlier. So NFTs are the thing that everybody's doing, building worlds in the metaverse, having fashion shows online. I guess, how much, but let's bring it back to real sort of high-end luxury. How much do you see cross-discipline collaborations between maybe artists and brands that sell handbags, and so creating like one-offs just to really come into this? It's aspirational, nobody else has it, so there's only 10 of these handbags with this design on it.
Go ahead.
It's incredibly important, and actually one of the reasons why it's incredibly important is a little bit of a long answer, but it's actually very relevant. China has become the single most important market for buying high-end luxury products in the world, as well as lower-end luxury products as well. United States is roughly around second, has been for a while, but China is the most important. China is also a country with a massive population, and you have many people in China who live in cities of above 18 million people. And it's become even more important in that country, in those cities, to be more exclusive. So exclusivity in luxury is only going one way, it's going up. And having limited editions is becoming more important and more valuable to consumers, because they are seeing more and more people buying things and wearing things and carrying things in the street, even in exclusive neighborhoods in China and places like that. They don't want to see someone with the same car on that street. They want to have a limited edition car. They don't want to see someone in that local shopping mall with the same Hermes handbag. They want to have a different one. They want to have something that other person can't get. So rarity and exclusivity is extremely important to consumers of luxury, even when they say it's not important, even when they say it's not really something that they need. The reticence that people have and have had in the high-end luxury space, when we engage with very wealthy people, so very high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, the thing they haven't liked about luxury, and just going back to the digital point, is that it seems like everyone is able to own luxury these days. It feels to them like it's been hugely democratized, because they see on social media the mountains of Louis Vuitton monogram everywhere. They see lots of people with huge watch collections, and the internet sort of magnifies just how many people in the world actually can buy this stuff, and so it really turns them off. And so when you have things which are one-offs, like made for them, bespoke, or things which are limited edition, only 10 people have them, it actually is extremely attractive, because it makes them feel that they're buying something that hasn't been mass-produced, but also they're buying something that they're not going to see when they walk down the street on someone else. But still comes from a great atelier. It still comes from a brand, a mark that makes things properly. And it's a bit of a tricky space, because limited editions, obviously, they work for brands. It creates this halo as well. So when you have a brand that does lots of limited editions, people who can't get limited editions buy at lower points down in the brand. So it does work for them. But it's logistically quite difficult to do this. And that's, when you have things where you have program schedules of drops and exclusive collaborations and who to work with, who not to work with, some things work and some things don't. And you can really crash and burn on, hiring an influencer or doing a collaboration, getting something made, and no one wants it. And the worst thing when you do things like, exclusive drops is for no one to be ending up buying, no one's queuing outside your store to buy it. That's really bad for your brand, because people visibly see that you're no longer hip, you're no longer desired, you're no longer cool. So it is a risky area. It's you're essentially trying to see how sexy you are on a sort of regular basis. So you're getting rated hot or not all the time, basically, with that kind of approach. But it does work, and particularly for wealthy people.
If I could just hog the mic one last
Absolutely.
time. I want to move the conversation over to an area that Haig is really, really into. So I'm setting you up. So just sort of picking up on this whole aspirational and what you can't have is what you really want. I remember listening to Ferran Adria, who is the chef who founded El Bulli. And he was talking about how when he creates meals, it's an experience, and these are one-off experiences. So everything down to every single course that you eat, the plate is different, the cutlery is different. So it's not just that they've paired the wine to the meal, it's every single thing. And he said once, when somebody asked him about the price of it, he said, well, imagine if you go to the opera, you pay for the opera ticket. So I want you to imagine that when you come and dine with me, it is like the equivalent kind of entertainment. So I guess moving the conversation sort of away from clothes and handbags and glad rags and sort of more onto food, what is it that you are having conversations with clients and people when it comes to how they can really be getting people back? Because obviously the restaurant industry has been severely hit by the pandemic. So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, when it comes to luxury, and particularly what we focus on, is sort of the wealthy interaction with luxury and ultra luxury places, they are desperate. They have been desperate to get back out there and get dining again and get traveling again. The thing that you're trying to do with people like that who are willing to spend lots of money on the wine, on the food, people use this word experience a lot, and no one actually, a lot of the time, properly defines what that actually is, and what the outcome of it is. The experience essentially is a collection of moments throughout the hours in which you spend in that place, where someone is surprised or delighted by something. So you get a little sort of amuse-bouche. Someone brings up something, and it's got this sort of, maybe that sort of dry ice effect. The reason why that's an experience is because it wasn't expected. There wasn't a photo outside the restaurant with "this is what you get when you come inside here." It's just it's a surprise. It's an element of that comes up every now and then. The other thing as well is service is part of the experience. And again, that's also not just about the minimum standard which is expected, which is obviously people being polite, but it's, can you delight me? Can you do something for me where I'm really going to remember this experience? And that's the last element that's most important. What they take away from all of that is memories. So how are you, with what you're doing, creating memories in that person's day, or that family group's day, or that couple's day? How are you building on that experience they're having, where they go away and they think the next day about it, and they go, well, wasn't that a fabulous time? Re-looking at the photos, really cherishing it. And I think that all service providers, all they need to think about all the time is just really simple things. Wealthy people don't need stuff for free. They're not looking for percentages off bills. They're not looking for transactional stuff. They're looking for things that are quite cheap to give, being remembered. If someone's going back to a restaurant or back to a hotel that they've been to many times before, don't just say welcome to them, you say welcome back. And you do that in different ways. You put their favorite wine or champagne in the room. You might remember they really loved a restaurant that they always went to in that city, and you provisionally say, we provisionally booked it for you just in case. You don't have to go there, but we thought it might be useful. Things like that are small touches that cost almost nothing for them to do, but actually the memory of that, the experience of that, is priceless for the person experiencing it.
That's really such a great tip for business owners at any level to understand. It's the touch points and how you can just go above and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, and you could actually do that so much better, I think, than before with all the digital support. I mean, I think on one of the sessions we had here, somebody was in fashion. I think it was Arno, and we were talking about all the digital things that are going to happen, and you'll be recognized going into a store that you like, and as you're looking at something, they will know again what you're looking at, and you'll be able to get support kind of digitally, and they'll know what you've bought, the history, and they'll be able to advise you and say welcome back to the store. And they'll tie in the whole kind of digital history with everything. They'll know exactly what you've looked at on their website. So that's really quite exciting what you'll be able to do, because I don't love spending hours in shops. So if I kind of went in somewhere and they told me straight away what I need to buy, I think I would like that.
That kind of area is a little bit of a threat to the sort of the sense of what luxury provides, because luxury is all about service. And as we know with things like Amazon, for example, when you make things delivery extremely fast, luxury, that was something that luxury prided themselves on, was doing things fast for people. That's no longer considered to be a luxury asset, doing things really quickly. I mean, it's actually, now it's just a baseline. So if you buy something online from a high-end brand and you pay £12 for delivery, the very minimum is it's delivered the next day. That's just a baseline now. That's not like an impressive thing. So now it has to come with all the sort of fireworks and whiz-bang as well. That the thing about that sort of recognition of you bought this last time, this would look good, and you go down to this area of the store, that sort of automation experience. I think the way in which luxury can actually win better is actually to go back to a sort of more natural and sort of analog experience, particularly getting people back into the stores and providing something that's a little bit imperfect. Because the thing about automation and digital is it's always perfect. They'll say, you bought 3 of these linen shirts last time, we've got 2 new colours in, go and buy them. Although that's extremely useful, it feels it's cold. There's a coldness to it, not just because of lack of human interaction, but actually it's of saying, in luxury, the idea would be saying, okay, you bought 3 linen shirts last time. Actually, I think you need something else to go with them. Well, how about something different this time? Or, I've got a really new thing that you might like, you might not like. that sense of imperfection actually, and it is part of the whole the experience of luxury. Luxury isn't amazing because it's always perfect. Luxury is amazing because actually it has flaws, and that's part of the whole sort of like the handmade thing is part of that experience as well. When you buy a suit that's been hand sewn, and and the lining inside has got hand stitching, it's not perfect. It's not been done by a machine. It's not been done by a robot. It's been done by a human, and to see that human touch is actually a really lovely thing. And I think in future, as we interact less and less with humans in other sectors, luxury is going to win in that area.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I had a similar trauma, I think, about 20 years ago in a couple of other industries, not necessarily luxury, where I think it basically cuts out the kind of the spontaneity and the creativity of what I might want to buy or listen to. And I know when Spotify first came out, I was horrified, because obviously at the age I'm at, I used to listen to Radio 1 and you listen to different things. Or when I was in France, I used to listen to FIP, and they put on amazing things that I would never find. And when Spotify first came out, I don't know if their algorithms are the same, I'm like, this is kind of scary that they're going to basically take what I normally listen to, and then that's what I have for the rest of my life, because I can't evolve. And I might not have moved from something else to jazz if I was, in that space. And the same scariness was kind of with the bookshops and the Barnes and Nobles, because now instead of getting separate, little bookshops, picking things, and as I walk through, I suddenly see this weirdest book on something that I didn't know I was interested in. I think it's kind of scary. And I think that's what you're saying now, is you walk into a store and maybe I wouldn't get some kind of jacket that you're wearing because I'm not slim enough, but so I might avoid a section, whereas in a shop I'll walk through and I'll suddenly see it and I'll try it and I'm like, wow, this really works for me now.
Exactly. And there's actually an interesting concept that's being developed right now by a company I know, and this is in luxury travel, which is goes to that point of you have a travel designer that really knows what you like, what you dislike. That can be really great. That's really valuable for wealthy clients to have that. But it can get quite boring because they know your taste so well. Like it's like that husband who always gets the socks and he always wants them, or he always knows which jewelry to buy his wife, and it's similar each time. That kind of thing gets boring after a while, and it's actually sometimes better. That's when people want the sort of the titillation and the serendipity of going to a new brand or a new provider, because they don't know them. And there's that getting to know you thing is a bit like the start of a relationship, the start of an affair. It's sort of getting to know each other's curves and things is actually part of the fun. That's what the relationship that actually some people do want to have with brands. But on that, in luxury travel, there is this development of a concept where they don't choose where they go. So the travel designer doesn't tell the people that are paying for this experience where they're going. They're just told to turn up at the airport on a certain day. Everything is done in advance. They don't know where they're flying to. They don't know what's going to be on the experience. It's pure serendipity in the sense that they're turning up to the airport and anything could happen. And they're taken on a plane. They're taken to a hotel. They don't know what hotel they're going to.
Wow.
And that's actually becoming something very desirable in a world where, because all this information and data is kept about people and so much is known about people by brands, and people are selling more effectively and more efficiently, that is actually becoming unattractive to consumers. And so the sense of going out into the world and just not knowing what's going to happen to you, because there is the days of sort of blackout. You have no idea what you're going to do, where you're going to stay. But there's a trust factor of the person that's arranged it. That's the difference. Is it in the darkness? You can still have a trust to a level of provision, but it is part of that sort of, I think, post-digital world that you're going to get this move towards that.
Right. Absolutely amazing. If there's any questions from the audience, obviously put your hand up and we'll get you up here. In the meantime, Abigail, I want to just ask you to just describe what luxury means to you, because I think I've got a lot out of what Winston has said, because I know you're into candles and all sorts of other things. So again, it's a very experiential feeling. I know my wife works in fashion, so she will look at the stitching. My friend Nigel looks at the leather on his Lamborghini and looks at different things. But again, it's certainly different things for different people. Whereas I wouldn't see the stitching, but I like the style of a jacket, and so I would get it for the style. So, Abigail, I'll put you on the spot. What is luxury for you?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question. And like I said earlier, I do love listening to Winston and how he describes it, because it really, it is describing what luxury is to me. So it comes down to the senses. So it's a feeling, it's a smell, it's a taste, it's a touch, it's ticking all of the boxes in your head. So it's kind of like a dopamine, adrenaline rush all in one go. And so as a marketer, obviously, I understand the neuroscience side behind why we do what we do, and how novelty can create extra dopamine, which is kind of what we're getting from going on trips where we don't know what is going to happen, but somebody else has catered for it within a circle of trust, if you like. So it's not like you're totally going to the middle of nowhere and there you go, good luck to you, in a bush tucker trial or something like this. But for me, I really think that I can pinpoint periods of time and points in my life, like a smell can take me back. I walked into a shop the other day and I smelled a perfume and I was like, takes me right back to 2019, and then I can smell another one and it's like, yeah, this is the year 2000 or 2005, or this was this beach. And I think for me, luxury is just about enjoying this one life experience that we have, and it's not necessarily about having to own things that are unownable or aspirationally want after things that I could never have. It's just really about wherever you are, fully enjoying that experience, and whether it costs a lot of money or a little amount of money, just recognizing and identifying where the different touch points have been thought about. And like you say, somebody has sewn this, what is the story behind it? So there'll be times where I've been to places and it will be the story that somebody has put into why they do what they do and how they do it. So I think it's really, really understanding that luxury is just it's a way of life, and that it's a word that means different things to different people. But yeah, I really resonate with the whole sort of romanticism of it with the Hollywood days, the movies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I'm hearing also, Abigail, you're reminding me when I was at the Salon d'Horlogerie for Cartier in Geneva, they helicopters out to the atelier. And again, it's about the story. I think what you're saying is the story is so important for me to connect to that brand, because I was invited by a friend, and then, in the end, he was looking at a watch that it took, I think, nearly 2 years. It was 2-year wait list. And then I saw the old lady painting the face at the atelier, and they said it'll take at least 2 to 3 weeks to paint this face of the thing. And the watch was about 700,000 pounds, I think, or dollars. And so, again, a lot of money, but when you see and understand the story behind that, and you see this old lady's probably lived in this Swiss village all her life, and probably her ancestors did the same types of things, or her parents, so then you're just blown away. And even though I don't have anywhere near that money to spend, I could see why someone is just like, I want that particular watch because I love the picture, or I love, the way the diamonds are set. And but I think what you're saying is also the story is so important for you. But what that tells us in terms of the business of luxury, how you communicate your story very effectively is really important. But as Winston said, but not in a way where everyone relates to it. Because if everyone kind of wants the same thing, then you're like, well, I don't want the same thing.
The storytelling thing is extremely important, and one of the things from a business perspective to understand about storytelling as well is that actually you're actually enabling a transaction before they've even bought the product. And what that transaction is, you're providing them with knowledge, and you're doing that actually free. You're giving them something that they value, particularly wealthy consumers. If you take them through, the watchmaking process, you talk about the way enamel is done, you talk about the history of that, where it came from. Chances are they're going to learn something in that sort of hour, 2 hour discussion, that experience. And they're going to remember the fact they learned something, and that's valuable. Because if you learn something whilst you're buying something, it changes the experience. It makes it less about a transaction. It makes it more about, I have actually experienced something and got something of value before I've even made the purchase, as well as tying that story to the product that you may end up buying. what it makes in the end, the product almost becomes like a souvenir of the actual experience of buying rather than the actual end itself. The experience you've already done. That's when we talk to wealthy people. They went to places like Patek or, and they learned about something. And travel can do this really well as well, just storytelling. They almost never mention the products that they ended up buying. They obviously bought it, but that's the least interesting part about it is when they bought it. It's more interesting the process that led them there, the pathway up to the purchase, that is the most exciting and memorable thing for them. So if as a brand, as a business, you can actually engender that sense of knowledge relay before the purchase is made, tell stories that are useful and make people learn things, the chances of people buying from you are not just increased, but actually memorizing that process and telling others how amazing that process was of buying it. What a wonderful time they had doing it. It wasn't simply just about going online, clicking on something and purchasing it.
Fantastic. Yeah. I want to take the storytelling piece one step further into an area that, actually a couple of things. One, I did want to mention, we were talking before with Winston, that I went to Heckfield Place, which was just a stunning hotel and 2 restaurants just on the border of Hampshire and Berkshire, where I live. And I went this week. It was my birthday yesterday. And for those of you listening in, we were supposed to do this yesterday. We had a black tie dinner, and so we were excited to do this in black tie. But in the end, because of the train strikes, we moved it by a day, and so that's why we're a day later and have less audience than we'd normally get. But the reason I'm saying that is, again, what I realize about luxury is I like the fact there aren't a lot of people there. It was a lot of space for a hotel, 432 acres. The person who bought this estate, I don't know the names, you might know more, but it's an old Georgian house from the 1710. He spent 9 years building out the estate and opened up in 2018. 9 years. It's got a lot of his own personal art, personal kind of antiques. I think 40 room. But I love just looking out and not seeing anybody. And so for me, I think that's part of the luxury is just not having the hustle bustle of a lot of people and just being allowed to enjoy.
If you actually spoke to very, very wealthy travelers, luxury travelers, that's the one thing they're really looking for now, particularly coming out of the pandemic. They want to travel again, but they don't want to travel with lots of people. That's not really about health necessarily. It's just about having a greater sense of peace and privacy. And not having people around you is actually as you know is a kind of long-standing luxury of almost anyone. Because if we think about great estates of the past, you think about royal palaces, these vast spaces where people could be in complete peace and privacy on their own. The sense of space is an interesting one, and wealthy people actually think about space in a different way. To others, when you talk to a wealthy person about a living room space, the sense of space is actually more like a cocoon. Other people might look at it and say, well, you can put loads of bits of furniture in here, you've got plenty of space to do this and do that. Actually, those people that are used to that sense of space actually don't see it that way. They don't see it as just empty space to put lots of things. They see the actual physical space as a cocoon from everything else that they don't want.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to welcome Julie, our moderator. Julie, just saw you've joined us a while back. Wanted to see if you've got any comments or questions.
Hi, Haig. Sorry, I was in meetings earlier and I couldn't jump in. I'm very disappointed. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to catch it all on playback. But yeah, I love the idea. I didn't manage to come in just at the end when you were talking about what luxury means. And I love the storytelling element of that. Winston's talking about, and I completely agree. And I was very lucky that early on in my career, when I was an auditor, I was auditor for the Asprey Jewellers Group at the time, which actually owned Garrard the Jewellers, Mappin and Webb, and obviously Garrard's and Asprey Group itself. So I was introduced to a lot of luxury from the inside on that basis. And I learned about the sort of watches because they owned the distributors for the Ebel and Jaeger-LeCoultre watches. So that's where I learned an awful lot about the story. And so I was then sold on the watches, not necessarily because of the way they looked, but because I loved the story behind them. I mean, the two faces of the Jaeger-LeCoultre are amazing. And my personal indulgence is, I to treat myself to Hermes scarves whenever I can, and I love the stories behind them, and especially when they when you look at when you choose the scarves, it is whether it's from an old archive image or whether it's a new design and what the inspiration is behind it. I mean, quite often I'm sold on the product more after I've heard the story more than I was before, and sometimes I'm a bit indifferent to it. But when I hear the story, I absolutely love it. I mean, that for me is absolutely right. Winston talks about what is it all about, and then again for luxury it's about the detail. And I'm not an online shopper because I love the way things feel. I go for quality in clothes, and you can't tell the quality of fabrics until you actually feel them. And again, with Aspreys, they owned Thomas Lajewski, who was in his heyday back in the sort of in the 90s. He dressed Princess Diana, so a lot of her key outfits. His signature was all the big buttons, and I was audited to him then, and so I was very privileged. I managed to buy lots of his clothes at the time as well. So yeah, I love the luxury end of the market, and it is the distinction and the story that goes behind it that sells it more than anything else. And it's the enduring thing that lets me hang on to the things. I don't want to let go of them because there is a story behind it. So back to you, Haig.
Well, I love that. And as I said, this is my birthday week, and I do want to indulge. I want to talk a little about cigars. And I was going to say, extending the story more into cigars, even Monte Cristo and some of these names of cigars were because people used to read the books to the rollers, right? And but let's talk a little about the whole kind of luxury world of cigars and even whiskey, if you like, Winston. We both indulge now and then. More now than then, but occasionally. But yeah, tell us about cigars.
Yeah, I mean, I think I first got into cigars again through watching movies, and it was one of those that classic image of these successful men who smoke cigars, and it wasn't really my. At the time, I was, in a family who a lot of anti-smokers, so I was never started cigarette smoke or anything like that. But I was always drawn to this sort of image of cigar smoke because it looked to me like success, and I also loved the smell. I remember being in the Algarve and smelling as a child. I remember the smell of these men wearing these very smart linen jackets at this concert, walking past smoking Cubans. I thought, oh wow, that smells amazing. And they were very smartly dressed, elegant men. And again, I kind of associated it with that. And I do think that's why cigars do have that luxury image. They've always been a luxury product, as long as anyone can really remember. I think that the thing that for me that did it was when I had my first cigar. Actually, I didn't really like it, but I still pursued it because, again, it was something that other people seemed to like and seemed to enjoy. And as you'll know, the more and more you smoke and taste different cigars, the more into them you get. And that's not just simply the tobacco. It's just actually your taste and your palate it changes. And I think that there's that sort of Epicurean nature of cigars, the different tastes and flavors, does elevate it as a tobacco product above all the other products, which seem to me to be a lot more efficient and perfunctory. Cigars have that beauty of perfumes and flavors that you don't get anymore with any other tobacco.
No, absolutely. And I think in terms of our discussion around luxury and kind of, post-pandemic, and I've used the word, I think, recession loosely, which I shouldn't do as a consultant, but I'm just saying we're waiting for some harder times or even harder times. But I think, again, what the cigar industry is doing is they're finding out that the demand is very high and was very high during the pandemic, and there's a shortage, and they're going to be putting their prices up quite a lot. And they want to kind of elevate themselves much more into at least the Cuban space. They want to basically say this is going to be like a luxury brand.
Yeah, they've learned from the best. If you think about organizations like Rolex, who have very, very cleverly just put in supply controls across the world, limited the amount of stock that's available. Obviously, firstly, you limit the number you make and limited editions. Instead of just making 10,000 of 5 different watches, you make hundreds of varieties of watches, and you make smaller numbers of each. That creates limited supply in the first place. Then you limit how much each part of the world is able to buy. Then you put people on waiting lists. Now what they're doing is all the stores are just display only for their watches, so you can't even go and buy many versions of Rolex anymore in any shop. Yeah. And all of that just creates this desire, because if you can't have it, you want it even more. And I think that's what's happening with cigars, is that to some people in it, maybe more practically minded, are irritated by what's happening with Habanos and their approach and trying to make it more of a luxury mark. But actually, over time, it's going to work very well for their business. They are already a luxury as a product, and they're going to make themselves even more of a luxury, and particularly the brands in it are become more elevated than they were before.
Right. And do you think what's happening in whiskey is also similar? Because I know the prices of whiskeys have gone up. Is that just purely supply and demand, or again, is that a kind of evolution, or a lot of these whiskey companies? One, they're all becoming bought by the same 2 or 3 major players. So is it again just the marketing side, or is it really a supply and demand, or is it again more people want to buy luxury?
There's more people that want to buy it. I mean, China has had a huge impact on the prices of luxury across the world, and we can't ever underestimate how much of an impact it has had. It has been the biggest factor in price inflation in luxury over the last 10 years. But the other thing with some luxury is it's become investment grade. So even categories that people never thought before would ever become investment grade, like handbags, for example, are becoming investment grade. People are buying things, and at auctions they are buying things which are rare simply because they want to be able to resell them. Watches another one, but whiskey is a huge one. And if you look at the money that's poured into whiskey auctions and the inventory that's gone into whiskey auctions, it's up by hundreds of % over the last 10 years, and the price points are obviously going up as well. And you're getting people now investing in casks as well, and so it's less. I think some of it is definitely about the fact that more people want to buy it because of it being a high-end luxury good, but also people are buying it because it's something that is going to make money and actually create value, rather than simply just create an experience that they want to enjoy. And I think there are lots of people now who are buying, particularly some bottles simply just to spin on. If they're offered, a limited edition, or they get one of the first 20 bottles of a release, some of the people that do that, they are just simply doing it for resale purposes. They're doing it to make some money, and so some of that pricing is coming from that flippers in whiskey,
right.
I think that so we've got to be careful about whether that's sort of a long-term thing. It could just be a short-term trend, but there is a definite sense that people value the liquid more. It has become more of an investment, yes, but actually people no longer see it as this sort of, it's just for these quirky weirdos who like, buying really expensive whiskey. It has become like wine, in the sense that people admire it and respect whiskey investors and collectors a lot more these days.
Yeah, we were approached, one of my friends, by a whiskey company that was going to set up in a certain area. I won't give the names now, to make an investment, and the more I think about it, is investing either in wine in the UK or potentially a whiskey in the UK, just like Cotswolds has done really well. It kind of seems like a good midterm to long-term investment. Obviously with whiskey you've got to keep it at least 12 years or whatever, so it's not a quick win, but it sounds like in terms of a market being pretty solid, whiskey and even wines. And we were talking about Heckfield Place. I don't know if you tried their sparkling wine, but it was fantastic. And I'm like, how do they start from zero and make such an amazing sparkling wine? I mean, it was just great.
I actually never tried that there, but there are some amazing English sparkling wines coming out now, and there's French luxury groups are investing in acres and hectares in the UK.
I saw that. Yeah, absolutely.
There's due to sort of ecological changes, and also just due to the fact that the way in which the quality of the soil, the terroir, is so high in places like Kent and Sussex, for example. The product that's actually being made on very low budgets, and very little experience, is exceptional. And so there is potentially a bright future certainly for English fizz and maybe for even English whites, and some people even believe grapes like Pinot Noir, which need to be grown in delicate, soft climates, not in harsh climates that don't grow so well. So maybe there could be a very, very good future for that kind of product in the UK.
So I think we should start looking around to buy a little winery, Winston. Maybe just put some pennies together and get started.
Yeah, we might be a bit late on that one.
Oh, okay. We can be very little, maybe. I mean, next to my shed, right, we'll make a bottle a year. But well, thank you. We're going to have to wrap up. We're out of time, and I am excited. It's my birthday week, so we indulged talking about whiskey and cigars. So that was a real treat for me. Thank you. Thank you to all the mods, Abigail, Julie, Sharina. As always, a really nice little power hour, and thanks to all our guests. And Shahnaz and all these other people who come on week. So appreciate that. Again, on the top of the screen, you see Other Side of the Business card, which is my podcast. And you can have lots of fantastic little chats and interviews like this, as I'm having today with Winston on there. Some really interesting guests. And we're getting ready to start another series as well. So any referrals in terms of people that would be there. We're talking really about different topics, but the most important thing is people that I love to talk to, such as Winston, and as well as that, people that it's not just about the business or the money. It's really about the essence of what they're up to, the mindset, and how they see the world. And the goal is that every hour we spend together listening to these things, we all get something out of it, and it's a very generative conversation. So again, Winston, any last words? And Abigail, I'll come to you too if you want to help close out. Any last words from you about luxury?
I mean, I've loved the conversation. I think one of the things that was clear to me is that how the language of luxury is clearly easily commonly shared amongst so many people, and people can recognize in others their interpretation of luxury. They can see it maybe slightly different, but there's still strong undercurrents there, strong notes that always come through. And I do think that means it can be bottled. This stuff isn't a mystery. It's not a maze. You can actually work out how to do this effectively as a business. There's obviously a magic. The thing I would say about that, though, is even though that is a good thing to do, there is a magic about luxury you don't want to ruin with just bottling everything up and then just pouring it out. And that is about that sense of creativity, that sense of spontaneity, that sense of the human side of it, the imperfection of it. We can't lose that, because if we lose that, we've lost luxury.
Absolutely. But thank you, Winston. Abigail.
Oh my goodness, what an amazing session today. And you just said there about creativity. And as always, conversations with you, Winston, inspires my creativity. So thank you so much. See you again soon. Again,
it's been a fantastic session today. And this full summary will be available, the session, on Instagram and LinkedIn. So please follow both. And then on my YouTube channel, you'll be able to listen to this later on. Or if you're on Clubhouse as well, you can listen to it there. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you for this special My Birthday Week edition of Haig's Business Winners. And have a great, safe couple of weeks.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to this session of Haig's Business Winners Club. Hit the subscribe button to stay updated with all the latest insightful business conversations from industry experts, leaders, and entrepreneurs.